In this video, we're going to talk about automation and cybersecurity. So, we're running into this issue today where we're kind of up against the side where you have all your automation engineers or your electrical engineers or controls specialists, controls engineers, whatever you want to call them, their title. And all they do generally is PLC programming and interlinking their systems together and making their systems function with HMIs, again, sensors, all alike. And then you have your cybersecurity side. And generally speaking, we look at cybersecurity as IT's problem, and we leave it there. Well, the problem that we're running into today is that we're seeing a lot of cyber issues that are coming into our automation side of it. And we have to kind of ask ourselves, well, does a controls engineer or an automation engineer really need to pay attention to cybersecurity? And does IT really need to know a lot about automation? And the answer to that is yes, they do. See, I'm of the big impression that an automation engineer needs to have a good, solid working knowledge of cybersecurity. And because of that, on our channel here, we're going to do a little bit of talking about particularly CompTIA's Cybersecurity Plus side of thing. And with that, we're going to go through their book and kind of use some books that have been written about Security Plus and kind of nitpick a little bits and pieces out of there and kind of how they apply to us in the automation side of things. Because this is becoming more and more critical by the day. So in 2023, an organization called Dragos, and I can give you a link in the bottom of the video for Dragos' website. And by the way, if you ever get some time, go to their site, check it out. They put on webinars about usually once a month that's very, very in tune with the cybersecurity side of automation. So particularly in factory, IoT, so industrial Internet of Things, linking it all together into an operational technology network. So definitely check them out. But anyway, last year they did a thing and they found 3 different major vulnerabilities that are coming at us into the world of automation, where they're installing viruses into our PLCs, and not so much that they're necessarily there, but it's a tracking system that may be in our router, not in our PLC, but it's monitoring what's going on and the network traffic and communications that are going back and forth. And it's exploiting our vulnerabilities by monitoring and tracking that. So, the issue then comes to play, well, how can this really affect a dumb PLC that I still have to program with my PC? It's not like they're stealing any real proprietary information, although in some instances the machine itself is a proprietary piece of equipment or knowledge that we don't want to get out. But in some instances it's not. So how does that really affect us? Well, it affects us by the fact that somebody could change a simple bit within that program, and as complex as some programs can get, it's almost impossible for the technician and the engineer to find. The other thing can happen is it can go into the side of the source code. They can be as intelligent as that, or the vulnerability and malware can be so intelligent as to put it inside of the source code that you can't find it in the source code, because you would have to get a hold of the vendor, break it down, have them go through it with you, and discover where it is within the source code. And knowing that your code is there along with this makes it so much more complex and difficult to deal with. So, though it's not exploiting major vulnerabilities of stealing people's social security numbers or other proprietary information like that, credit card information and the like, it is potentially running the risk of shutting your line down for days at a time. And in today's economy, knowing that it's difficult still to get PLCs back into our plant, if this shuts down your PLC and your processor's fried and you can't use it anymore, you can't go back through it, you can't flash it, because somewhere inside of its source code there now is a problem, so flashing won't work to reset the system back to factory defaults. You're going to have to go back and replace the whole controller, which then poses the issue of how long is the controller going to get back to our shelf? Maybe we've got some vulnerability inside the backplane, which, again, is a possibility the way things are working. Yes, we have great manufacturers that are trying to prevent that kind of stuff, but again, it's available. It's an option that can happen. So you're going to have to go back and replace everything of that PLC, everything that communicated with it, everything that's there. And you're going to have to isolate it, because you don't know if that vulnerability is in the router, up above, that somehow it's nested itself into the firewall, or you don't know if there's actually a hole inside of your network that somebody's actually monitoring while you're doing all of that work on the side. So you're going to isolate that system, and you're going to be down isolating it, you're going to be installing a new one, and you're going to have to go back to an old revision that came off of your database because, well, that last revision that you might have had, or the last 10 revisions, may still have that vulnerability inside of it. So you're going back to the very, very beginning of this piece of equipment's life within your plant, and now you're going back and having to redo all of that. This is why it's critical that cybersecurity is understood, not necessarily known and monitored as an analyst, but is understood by the automation engineers, controls engineers, or control specialists, or even the technician for that matter, because of these vulnerabilities and these threats that are coming up against us. Now, if your system is a standalone, totally isolated thing, yeah, the risk is a lot less, because the way they would have to hack into you is they'd have to get into your database on your computer, on your server of your company. They'd have to hack into that, contaminate that, and you'd have to dump that onto your PLC controller. So, yes, a standalone system or air-gapped system is a little bit lesser of a threat, but nevertheless, that threat still exists there. So, again, back to what I said, it's important and imperative that we have an understanding of the cybersecurity from an automation engineer standpoint. So, like I said, stay tuned to the channel. We're going to be working on some more information and discussions on cybersecurity and how it affects us from the PLC standpoint, the threats and the vulnerabilities that we have, and even some of the viruses that are available that could shut us down. So, once again, as always, thank you all for joining me, and stay tuned.